Hi there, I'm Beth and today I'll be taking you through the construction of the Smart Doll Sequoia jacket. This is a free sewing pattern made available by Choo at Culture Japan, the creators of Smart Doll. You'll find the link to download this pattern in the description below the video. I would say this is an intermediate level pattern. I personally started out making the free t-shirt and jeans patterns for Smart Doll first, and I would recommend you do the same. I have full tutorial videos for those patterns on my channel as well, so check them out if you'd like to see more explanation about how to read these patterns, interpret the symbols and such, because I won't get into that so much in this video. Here are the pattern templates, printed out at 100% scale. It is a lot of pieces, so take careful note of the writing on them, how many to cut, which edges should be overlocked in advance, and which have specific directions, as well as the fabric grain lines. I've transferred a lot of the alignment markings to my fabric pieces in the form of little cuts in the seam allowance. I really find this helps with matching them up. I haven't tried this pattern before, so to help me visualize it, I drew a sketch using the CJ store photos to help clarify which parts overlap where, and then used that sketch to plan out some different fabric colours. Some other things you'll need are snap fastenings. I have this set of cam snaps I'll use, although you can use sew-on ones. You'll need a fully opening zip. Mine is 20 centimetres long, but I cut it down to about 16.5 centimetres later. You'll also need a tiny piece of zip for the breast pocket. You can use the top of a zip, but it doesn't have to be functional if you want to use a little cut off extra piece instead. And here are my fabrics. Some denim, which has a silver backside. It looks like tough carbon fibre material in doll scale to me. And the green, medium weight polycotton fabric. It's a recycled pair of trousers. Let's start the construction of the jacket. Jacket back. I've marked these seams as A and this one as B. Join the back A and back sides B together. Overlock those seams, press them inward, and top stitch. Next, we join the now combined seam C to the back yoke lower seam D. Then overlock that seam, press upwards and top stitch. Jacket front. Join the front seams E to the fronts F. Make use of the pattern markings to help align them. Overlock the seams, press towards the front centre, then top stitch. Breast pocket. Use a functional or a decorative zip. Take breast pocket 2, snip into these corners and press in the seams for the zip opening. Then lay the zip underneath, pin, and top stitch around these 3 sides. I've used the top of this zip so it still functions. Next, mark and sew the dart. Press the seam to the right and top stitch. Please excuse me doing this slightly out of order. The dart should have been done before adding breast pocket 1. Now take breast pocket 1, fold in this seam and align with breast pocket 2. Top stitch into place. Turn in the seam allowance all round the pocket and press. Use the templates and pins to position and sew the breast pocket onto the jacket front. This should be on the doll's right side. I roughly stitched mine into place and then removed these stitches afterwards. Shoulder flap. This piece will require a snap fastening. Join right side to right side and sew these 2 seams. Turn out, press and top stitch before adding the snaps. Here I'm using my cam pliers to attach a plastic snap. It's the smallest of this type I found, but I would like to find smaller metal ones instead. Add snaps where marked on the flap and the jacket front. Then align the flap to the jacket front and stitch along the raw edges within the seam allowance. Side pockets. Fold, press and top stitch the 2 seams on each side pocket 2 piece. These seams should already be overlocked. Open out to sew the box shape, then fold it back and stitch along the long edge. Repeat for the mirrored second pocket. Overlock where marked, then fold in the other seam allowances of side pocket 1. Press them and use the template to position and pin them to the jacket front. Leave the serged edge flat. Top stitch onto the jacket and repeat for the other side. I push pins through the fabric and template from the back and use them to match my corners. Fold in and press the seams for the side pocket 2 pieces. Use the template and pins again to position and sew on side pocket 2 to each side. Front facing and zip. I've transferred the markings from the front templates that show where the zipper should stop. I separate the zip. If yours is longer than needed, like mine, it's best to keep the bottom part intact and fold and cut the excess at the top. I will use the markings on the belt template to work out where the zip should end at the bottom, and will pin it based on that measurement. overlock, then fold and top stitch where marked on the facings. Then align the zip with the teeth facing away from the centre and sandwich it between the front and the facing. Here you can see my zip pinned on and how I fold and tuck away the excess before lining up the facing pieces. Sew along the front opening seam and turn out, then top stitch. Joining at the shoulders. Sew together the fronts and back at the shoulders. Overlock those seams, then press them towards the back, then top stitch. My car boot sale Riccar overlocker has decided to cease working. Fortunately, I have a replacement waiting to take its spot. Here is my new Singer Quantum Stylist. I was delighted with the combination of overlocker, foot and stitch, and this will happily replace my old overlocker. Shoulder patch cloth and epaulettes. Fold in and press the long outward curving seams and the short seams at each side. Take note of the front and back directions with these. Then pin and top stitch both patch cloth pieces onto the jacket, using the templates to align. You can see them marked on these templates. Use the back yoke template to mark the positions of the epaulettes. We call these epaulettes in Britain. Fold the epaulette pieces right side in and sew these 3 sides. Turn them out, press and top stitch. I like to trim down the seam allowance before turning them through. I also decided to top stitch them by hand. Take note of the angled ends. Add snaps to the epaulette tips and on the back yoke where marked. You will see they have a right side and a wrong side. Sew each epaulette into place within the seam allowance. Your epaulettes should look like this. Collar. Take note that the collar isn't symmetrical. Align both pieces, right sides in, and pin. Using the notches on the pattern to distinguish the longer end that will extend beyond the jacket. Sew the upper half of the collar, noting the larger seam allowance on one side also. Snip the corners and turn right side out. Pin to mark the longer end and press in the lower seam allowance curve for the inner side only, like this. Extra collar should extend from the doll's left side. Align the outer collar BC with the back yoke BC, right sides in. Pin, then sew together. Flip the collar up and tuck in the inner pre-ironed side. All the raw edges should be tucked in. Pin, then top stitch all round the collar and add snaps to each end. Here I've actually hand stitched the collar ends closed and tacked the inside collar into place before I top stitch. Next we'll assemble the sleeves. Sleeves. Take the 2 patch cloth pieces. Fold, press, and then top stitch the top and bottom seams of the patch cloth onto the centre sleeve as marked on the template. Repeat for the other side, and note the back and front directions. I've marked these seams G and H. Join the sleeve seams G with the front and back sleeves H. The outer seams of the front and back should already be overlocked. Overlock the new seams, fold them inward and top stitch. Lay out the sleeves, making sure the wider back section is facing the back, so that the cuffs can be attached facing the right direction. Cuffs. The pointed end of the cuff should be towards the jacket front. I have pre-pressed inward the inner seam allowance of each cuff. This is the side opposite the notched marking. Use that marking to align the cuff with the sleeve right side in and pin. Fold in and pin the seam allowance of the sides of the sleeve itself, as indicated on the template. Then sew along this seam. Now open out the cuff and fold it back on itself like this, leaving the pre-pressed seam folded. Pin and sew only the point at this end and the short straight seam at the other. Trim the excess seam allowance, turn right sides out and use a round-tipped tool to push out the seams. Press neatly, then top stitch round the cuff and add the snaps where marked on the template. Repeat this for the other sleeve and cuff. Make sure the sleeves are still at the right sides, then align and pin them right sides in to the shoulder seam of the jacket. Sew the sleeves to the shoulders. Check that they're both lined up correctly. Then overlock those seams. Use the sleeve side template to mark on each sleeve the sewing end points. We'll then fold the jacket right sides in along the sleeves. Close jacket sides. Align the front and back at the sleeves, armpit and sides, then sew the sides closed up to the sewing end markings on the sleeves. Overlock the side seams, snip into the seam allowance at the armpits to ease the fabric, then turn the jacket out. Belt. Transfer the markings from the template. Align and pin the belt to the jacket hem, right sides in. Make sure the jacket side seams are facing inward. The belt will extend beyond the jacket at each end. Sew the hem seam. Tuck in the sides and the inner hem seam. This will wrap round to the inside. Press these seams. Now tuck the inner seam into place and either pin or hand stitch before top stitching round the belt. I'm hand stitching using the previous seam as a guide to keep the belt evenly spaced. Now top stitch the belt. Here's mine finished, and that should complete the whole jacket. I am blown away by the finished product. This was a challenging but hugely rewarding pattern to put together. I'm so glad I decided to use 2 different fabrics. I just love how it looks. I have to say, I'm so glad I have my heavy-duty Singer sewing machine for projects like this, because I used both denim and a heavier weight fabric. The seams might have been too thick for a lesser machine to get through. I do already have an idea for incorporating more embellishment and weathering into a future jacket, and I might try weathering this one a little later too. I'm so grateful to Culture Japan for releasing these wonderful patterns for free. Please make sure you get yours from the link below and save this video to come back to and sew along with. Ooh, who's this that's just arrived? You'll get to meet her soon. For now, here's Haru testing the fit of my new jacket. I love the shape of the body, the long slender sleeves. You can tuck up the cuffs for a casual look, and I just can't get over all the pockets and snaps. I love these details. Well, I do hope you enjoyed this. Please make sure you're subscribed, hit the like button, and leave me a comment if you did. Let me know what you think of this jacket. Will you be trying it out? What other Smart Doll pattern would you like to see me make? Happy sewing, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!